For most of the world, George Tyrus Murdoch was always larger than life. A booming voice, an immovable presence, a man built to dominate rooms whether they were wrestling arenas or television studios. Strength defined him publicly, but solitude defined him privately. Long before championships, commentary desks, or national recognition, Tyrus was a child learning how to survive rejection, pain, and silence. His life became a long performance of resilience, a role that required him to never bend, never soften, never admit how heavy the armor felt. This story is not about titles or headlines. It is about what happens when a man who has spent decades fighting the world finally stops fighting himself. When noise fades, applause ends, and what remains is the quiet work of becoming whole. Tyrus's journey, intertwined with the life of Ingrid Rink, is not a fairy tale. It is a human story of damage, devotion, endurance, and peace earned the hard way. A childhood split between worlds. George Timothy Murdoch was born into division long before he understood what it meant. Growing up biracial in Boston, he existed in spaces where he was never fully accepted. Rejected by his mother's side for his skin color and never fully embraced by his father's world either, young George learned early that belonging was conditional. That kind of rejection doesn't fade with age, it settles deep. As a child, he absorbed the message that vulnerability was dangerous, and protection had to be physical. His body became his shield, his strength a form of survival. This unresolved loneliness followed him everywhere, shaping his temper, his drive, and his hunger to be undeniable. Even as he grew into an imposing presence, the emotional wound remained untouched. He wasn't trying to be famous, he was trying to be unbreakable. That instinct would push him towards sports, then wrestling, and eventually into a life where performance replaced healing. The crowd saw power. Inside, there was still a boy trying to matter. Dreams shattered before they began. Before wrestling ever entered his life, Tyrus believed football would define him. Playing for the University of Nebraska at Kearney, he dreamed of stability, education, and becoming a teacher. It was the first time he felt close to a future that wasn't about survival. Then everything collapsed. A ruptured appendix led to surgery that severed nerves in his leg, leaving him with a permanent limp. Overnight, his athletic identity vanished. For a man whose sense of worth was tied to physical ability, this loss was devastating. He wasn't just injured, he was untethered. The dreams he'd clung to were suddenly unreachable. Depression, confusion, and fear followed. This moment became a defining fracture. Instead of processing the loss, he buried it. Pain turned inward, then outward. Wrestling didn't arrive as a dream job. It arrived as a lifeline. It offered him a new way to use his body, even damaged, and a new stage where pain could be applauded instead of pitied. Wrestling as survival, not stardom. When Tyrus entered the wrestling world in the early 2000s, it wasn't glamorous. Developmental leagues were brutal, unforgiving places where bodies broke quietly and careers ended without notice. Under WWE, first as Gilla and later as Brodus Clay, he learned how to turn suffering into spectacle. Wrestling taught him how to smile through exhaustion, how to bleed without complaint, and how to wear a mask convincing enough that no one questioned what lived beneath it. The Funkasaurus persona brought cheers, color, and visibility, but it also deepened his exhaustion. He wasn't healing. He was hiding. Each character change felt like survival, not growth. When WWE released him in 2014, the silence returned louder than ever. He was injured, older, and uncertain. Wrestling had given him structure, but not peace. Still, quitting wasn't an option. Reinventing himself again in TNA and later the NWA was less about ambition and more about proving he could still stand. Success that felt strangely empty. By the time Tyrus reached the top of the National Wrestling Alliance, holding major titles and earning respect as a dominant force, something unsettling became clear. Victory no longer filled the space it once did. The belts came off. The crowd went home. Silence returned. Fame had solved none of the deeper questions. He had survived rejection, injury, and instability, but he had never learned how to rest. The persona of the unstoppable giant had become a prison. He was admired, feared, and celebrated, yet profoundly alone. This emptiness wasn't failure. It was an invitation, a signal that something beyond achievement was missing. That realization prepared him, unknowingly, for the most important meeting of his life. Not with a promoter or a producer, but with someone who didn't need his strength to feel safe. Someone who saw the limp, the fatigue, and the man underneath. Ingrid Rink, strength built from survival. Ingrid Rink's life followed a very different path, but it was marked by the same resilience. She built herself from necessity, not privilege. Fitness became her anchor at a young age, a way to claim control in an unstable world. Teaching classes as a teenager wasn't about ambition, it was about survival. Motherhood intensified everything. When her son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, fear could have consumed her. Instead, it sharpened her. Sensible Meals was born not from business plans, but from love and urgency. Her 150-pound weight loss mirrored her internal transformation. She wasn't chasing perfection. She was reclaiming herself. Yet even after building businesses and helping others, peace remained elusive. Like Tyrus, she had spent years being strong for everyone else. By the time they met, she wasn't looking to be saved. She was looking for balance. Two survivors, learning to be soft. Their relationship didn't begin with fireworks. It began with recognition. They saw each other's exhaustion without needing explanations. Tyrus didn't need to perform. Ingrid didn't need to prove. They learned slowly, carefully, how to coexist without armor. The birth of their daughter, Georgie Rose, in 2014 shifted everything. Fatherhood rewired Tyrus in ways nothing else ever had. Applause lost its power compared to laughter at home. Together they blended families, navigated chaos, and built routines that prioritized presence over image. Their bond deepened through shared silence, not constant affirmation. They didn't fix each other. They softened each other. Over time, love became less about intensity and more about steadiness. That quiet devotion carried them through years of change, including moments that threatened to tear everything apart. The storm that tested their foundation. The allegations against Tyrus in 2019 were a breaking point. Public scrutiny is merciless, and accusations don't just follow the accused, they seep into families. While legal outcomes eventually resolved the matter, the emotional damage was immediate. Ingrid chose silence, not weakness. Her priority was protection, not defense. Therapy, fear, and uncertainty became part of daily life. For Tyrus, it was the hardest challenge he'd ever faced. There was no opponent to overpower, no persona to hide behind. He had to sit with discomfort, accountability, and vulnerability. This storm tested everything they believed about loyalty and trust. When it passed, they weren't unscarred, but they were intact. Love proved itself not in public statements, but in private endurance. Choosing peace over applause. Tyrus's retirement in 2023 wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. Walking away from wrestling on his own terms was an act of self-respect. For the first time, he listened to his children when they asked him to come home. The farm in New Jersey symbolized everything he had once believed was impossible. Quiet mornings, animals, routine. Ingrid's decision to rebrand and release her former identity mirrored his own letting go. Together, they built a life centered on rhythm instead of reaction. Their home became a place of healing, structure, and joy. Fame became secondary. Presence became everything. A new definition of strength. Today, Tyrus's life is no longer defined by domination, but by availability. He shows up. He listens. He stays. Ingrid continues to evolve, grounded not in hustle, but in tension. Their story isn't inspirational because it's perfect. It's powerful because it's honest. Strength didn't save them. Stillness did. In the end, the loudest man in the ring found meaning in quiet moments that never make headlines. And sometimes, that is the greatest victory of all.